Welcome back to the Reier on YouTube channel, where it is time once again for TR and Coach Smitty, the second installment of the show here on the channel. It is a Thursday night, and we are live right here on Reier on YouTube. We certainly appreciate each and every one of you jumping on board with us. If you'd like to jump into the show chat, maybe you have a question for the program, maybe you want to get nuts and bolts-ish where the football is concerned with Coach Jeff Schmidlkofer. I know he'll entertain those questions and those comments thoroughly, as we do here on the program. But Jeff, interesting situation for this Alabama football team, coming off what we anticipated to be an easy win over an FCS opponent over Mercer. Maybe real quick, some of the things that you took from that game. Was it more of a sort of mental challenge for Alabama coming off the win over LSU on the road, knowing that it's an inferior opponent? I know you've been in those situations as a coach in the past, wondering if your guys are going to respond, not so much in terms of even just the scoreboard, but that standard of play that you always talk about, that regardless of the opponent, you're looking to hit.
Yeah, I was pleasantly shocked. You know, we talked last week about it's a line of scrimmage game, and I thought Alabama pretty much took over that early, right? And yeah, I mean, they really never gave Mercer. There's a couple plays Mercer got early. You know, we talked a little bit today on the one where the running back busted out to the boundary on that one play where they had everybody loaded over on the trip side. But I thought they fit well. I thought their alignments were good. They played fast. You know, a heck of a catch by the Mercer kid over on the fade ball and at the pylon. But I mean, you know, that's going to happen. That's just but outside of that, I thought they answered the bell. You know, and you're always worry about that, right? But I thought they answered the bell and did what they're supposed to. Got out of there, played a bunch of people, and you know.
Maturity type of check, right? To find
Right.
out where your team's at. You would think at this late stage in the season that they get it, but I guess you can't always take that for granted either. I mean, we've seen even Nick Saban teams in that very same spot in the past. Georgia Southern certainly comes to mind in the Tin Horn game back in 2011. You know, but that's also where you don't want to see like academy style offenses either, right? Wing T concepts, triple option in November. That's got to be, especially a defensive coach's worst nightmare. And Mercer having a great season, but I think it did benefit Alabama that conceptually, anyway, Mercer right now is more along the lines of what Alabama's seeing defensively on a week in and week out basis. And I got to think it helps with carryover to Oklahoma, too. You don't have to sort of stop and then restart all over again, maybe with some of that stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. As you were talking, the Citadel game comes to mind too. A few years ago, where we was 10-0 at halftime or whatever, and I had to make some plays in the second half. Yeah, I think Nick had a enough of the option, you know, on his career. But yeah, you know, and the rules have changed now. You can't block it like that, you know, and you can't block the option like you used to. So Mercer was kind of like, you know, the spread and some split zone stuff and some outside inside zone, kind of what they see every Saturday, right? And you know, it was just, I thought that they just kind of dominated the game. I think what they had like 61 yards rushing or something. So yeah, they were locked in. And you were saying earlier, you know, a lot of young kids, you know, the young kids, the maturity, even the starters, you know, a lot of times those guys take their foot off the gas because they don't really know the standard yet. But I thought overall, though, I thought they answered the bell.
Takeaways, man, continue to be a big part of this
100%.
defense. They did it again on Saturday against Mercer. It doesn't feel like it's opponent dependent, you know, like some defenses are great taking the football away against inferior opponents, maybe not so much when the stakes move up or higher or the talent level goes up, but it's starting to feel like regardless of who this team plays, they're capable of taking the football away. We saw that again against Mercer, and this is an Oklahoma team coming up that has struggled with that. You know, it's been a problem for Oklahoma this season, especially when you look back to even the last 3 games. I think Oklahoma has had 8 turnovers in the last 3 SEC games. I'm not going to throw Maine in there in that mix, but it's a good time of year to be playing clean, right? And also maybe forcing your opponents into maybe not playing as clean.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, the combination of how Alabama's kind of found themselves a little bit the last 3 games on offense. And then if you get 3 turnovers and then you don't turn over the ball at all on offense, the analytics and the numbers are just, increasing your chance of winning the ball game, or no matter who you play, Mercer, Oklahoma, Tennessee, whatever, well, Tennessee, I think we won the turnover battle and still, just didn't take advantage of the opportunities offensively. But, anyway, so, yeah, I agree with you. The Oklahoma team is they're going to be difficult at home, but they will give it. They'll give it to you. And if they give it to you, you better score, because it's going to be a raucous place to play now. So not going to be easy.
It should be early anyway, right? Saturday
Right.
night. And that's why it's so important, I'm sure, to go in there. And even if it isn't indicative of the score early in the game, there's this sense anyway that you're in control of things. You're dictating things. And for Oklahoma, I think for Alabama defensively, that starts with the Oklahoma offense, which when you go through the numbers right now, passing offense, and I just talk when I throw these numbers out, Smitty, I talk more in terms of just SEC play. I don't really care what you did against Maine. I don't care what you did against Houston or Tulane. I understand some of those teams are capable opponents, but I just look at SEC data. And right now, Oklahoma coming into this game offensively, 14th in the SEC in passing offense at 175 yards per game in conference play. Rushing offense last in the SEC at 97 yards per conference game. Scoring offense 15th in the SEC at 15.2 points per game in conference play. So when I think about controlling this game particularly, I probably look more at the Alabama defense setting the tone than anything else.
Yeah, really. The needle kind of swings that way, doesn't it? I mean, you would think you could go in there, but those stats, it can be a trap. You know what I'm saying? Really can.
Rat poison, right?
Yeah, exactly. The rat poison. That's right. That always comes up. But yeah, it looks like that they've struggled offensively, and then I've watched Oklahoma a few times this year. I don't know what their identity is. What do they want to do, especially the Auburn game? If Auburn doesn't give it to them 3 times or 4 times, Auburn probably beats Oklahoma. It seems like they've settled in a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but still they struggle moving it.
They do. And even when you talk about moving the football, a lot of that hinges on third down success. Oklahoma last in the SEC in terms of third down conversions in conference play at just 30%, 14th in the SEC in red zone touchdown conversion rate at 40% of the red zone opportunities for the Sooners in conference play inside opponent's 20-yard line going for touchdowns. Now, let me ask you this now, because Oklahoma has had a bye week, OU coming off a bye week. As a defensive coach, how much do you have to concern yourself with some variety, I guess we could say, that you might see from Oklahoma this week? Because it's an Oklahoma offense with Jackson Arnold to start the season, then Michael Hawkins Jr. comes in, then back to Jackson Arnold after Hawkins has a brutal performance early against South Carolina about a month ago now, back in October. How much, I guess, is too much that you can kind of consume yourself with in terms of trying to get ready for an offense like this? How much do you just have to lean on, okay, this is what we think they are? Because you said it, they seem to be identityless throughout this season, but they do have a couple of quarterbacks that can do some different things behind center.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's like, I think, teams are going to settle in who they are, but right now you don't know who they are. So you got to let your players know, hey, listen, they may have a wrinkle here or two, and it may take us a series. They're probably got the same philosophy that Alabama has right now. Stay out of your 3rd and 7 pluses, right? And give yourself a chance on 3rd, and be in 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4. And 2nd and 8 is not all that bad, and that's what I would think. But yeah, and then and hey, you always got to be aware of something, a trick play. We always coached our guys, hey, the best time to run a trick play is first play of the game. That's when everybody's nervous and, your eyes might not be in the right place. And, so, I remember was it 02 when we played them, we opened it with Franchoni. We opened up with an onside kick.
Yeah.
So
you might get that from Oklahoma Saturday night, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I just think you just got to be ready, ready for everything, but really prepare what they do the best. And, by game, what is this, 10, 11, whatever game it is, you got enough film to stop, what you need to stop and focus on what you need to, focus on.
So for you as a defensive guy and knowing that Oklahoma's had these struggles, are you aggressive from the outset on Saturday night against an offense like this? Or are you more of, hey, we're going to get in kind of our base stuff and we're going to see how it plays out, with Oklahoma on the script early? How much of a stance do you take in terms of trying to dictate to them, understanding that they've had their struggles, but maybe also trying to protect yourself from giving up the kind of big play that sparks them, right? In terms of mindset and psyche and gives them the lift they need playing at home. How do you go about that?
I think you, Coach Womack, Coach Roach, I think you got to find the matchups, right? Especially along the defensive front. Where's your matchup? And, I think down and distance determines a lot of that. There's some run blitzes that you can, it may look like you're really being aggressive, but it's the basic run stuff, run blitzes, or, until they, in fact, I would make that guy beat me throwing it. Let's stop the run and see because they're just, they're what, 95.
They're depleted at wide receiver right now.
They are
still,
95 yards a game running. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I would find the matchups, especially interior wise, and play some games like they have all year. They played a bunch of ends and Tex stunts and with the ends and the T and the stunts, and keep doing what you're doing. But I wouldn't overthink it. Not until you need it to.
Yeah, Kane Womack doesn't seem overly reliant on numbers in terms of pressures. I don't know. Maybe you've seen something different, but he does like his games up front, doesn't he? The twists and some of that stuff. It seems like Alabama, maybe more so than even under Nick Saban, if there's one of those changes that we've seen, maybe it's been up front with that approach.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in the close sets, like when he's got a tight end and close set trips away.
Explain that though. What close set when you say that?
Well, like if you got a tight end and trips away from the tight end, and right. So anything like that, you'll see him do that a lot. He'll rip C gap a lot, or even take that in, rip the B, and then bring the corner off the edge and roll it off behind him. You see a lot of that. But yeah, he's. Damani the other day came off the edge and caused that fumble. That was on a close set, off the boundary. So, I just think that he tries to confuse them up front and get a guy loose, and all it takes is one to get guy loose to muddy it up, and I think that's probably where they're focused at, because I think they have a pretty good advantage. I know Oklahoma's got a couple of that guard, the offensive guard is an all SEC guy, but
good at the center position, I think. But it's been rough for Oklahoma up front, man. That was a question mark for the Sooners going into the season, and it has played out that way. We've got Suit RTR checking in here in the comments. He says this defense hates giving up points. Talk to me, Jeff, about, in your opinion, how far this defense has come though in the last month, because they were giving up some points. They were giving up some yards, but boy, I thought even against Tennessee, they had shown signs of improvement, but then coming out of Tennessee, there were some rough spots. I guess what we're finding out too, Jeff, is that in real time, you may not understand how much improvement your opponents are making too. Because look at South Carolina offensively right now.
Yeah.
That was thought to be kind of a disappointing performance against South Carolina in Tuscaloosa, but now South Carolina is scoring 30 plus, it seems like.
Right.
They did it against Oklahoma, now benefited from some takeaways from the Sooners, and then did it against Missouri last week. So how much does that change, do you think, week to week?
Oh, I think it changes. I think it changes a lot. And I think, at Vanderbilt, the sky was falling, right? 30,
Yep.
whatever 35 they gave up, and of course, Vanderbilt has pretty much scored on everybody they played, though, and like you said about South Carolina, South Carolina, Vanderbilt's at a little bit of the wall now. But yeah, I think they're one of the most impressive stops they got all year when they held LSU to the field goal on the first drive down there.
That was big.
That was huge. They let one get loose down to the 3 or whatever and held them to a field goal there. And it was just like, after that, it was lights out. Their fits were good. I think they're just getting confident in what they're doing. They give you it looks like they give you the same look pre-snap. We talked a little bit about that last week. And I just think he's more of a front seven guy, where Coach Saban was more of a back, would run a lot of games with the guys in the back end, so anyway, so that's kind of where I just think that they're just kind of settling in. And if you're going to beat them, you're going to have to, they seem to bend a little bit, but they don't seem to. Their red zone defense is pretty good.
If there's a concern you have for this Alabama defense right now, Smitty, where is that?
Well, I think you got to start with the secondary, right? They're just so young. I think Hubbard, kind of shored it up a little bit, but they're still young at that one corner spot over there. And then on the backside of the hash, especially if they go nickel, and they've been hit with some injuries there. But I was a little bit worried at the beginning of the year with their depth up front, but some of those guys have come a long way. And
Had they tightened up that rotation? Does it feel that way? Because they played a ton of people early.
Yeah, they do.
Does it feel like maybe they've sort of limited that scope to 4, 5, 6 guys now?
I think so. I think they're good, at least 5. I think, and then what I think we talked about this last week too. I'm shocked at how many people play in the back end.
That's been surprising.
Yeah. Because usually, Coach Saban, he had his 4 or 5 dudes.
He didn't trust that many guys. No, he didn't trust them. No. And most defensive coaches don't, right? Because that's where you can give it up in a hurry. Yeah. If you're not right on the back end.
Yeah. You screw up on the back end, it's a touchdown. You screw up front, 9-yard game. So it's hard to put your finger on exactly how their rotations are, but I tell you what, it's effective. It's really effective. So, it's the first, and then of course they don't look like they move the 3 and the 3 backers. Jihad and Deontay, they stay in just about every snap.
Jefferson has worked his way into that mix.
For sure. Yeah.
Now with Q out, especially, I think that maybe takes on, what do you think, added importance with Quay Rousseau had a nice interception last week. Yanzi Pierre is still a young player. I think that showed up. You talked about the back getting out of the back door there on that big gain for Mercer last week. It looked like maybe Yanzi was a little aggressive in his approach, but you also pointed out to me earlier today, kind of the alignment for Alabama put that defense in a position where if one guy doesn't make the play, then the potential's there for a big play. And it's not just exclusive to what we see from Alabama. It sounds like other defenses are kind of taking that approach too.
Yeah, it does. And then, that one formation where trips where everybody's it's 4v3. It seems like that's been the last 2 or 3 years. I don't know if they all talk about it in the off season. It's effective, but you're just really weak to the boundary or nub side. And that's what happened the other day. Once we got Pursuit, and Pursuit he just bounced it out back on the backside. And I think Malachi Moore had to push him out of bounds for about 17 yards. So usually, because they flipped the corner over into the trip side, the other corner was over here on the trip side. And I was like, wow. So,
and the receiver that corner was up on was dead. You pointed out to me, was on the line with the outside receiver on too. So he was effectively ineligible, right?
Correct. And I'm not in their film room. So maybe there was they saw something there. Maybe there was fast screen over there, a tunnel coming back underneath. Yeah. And then, and they just ran, and it was a busted play, in fairness. Yeah. But boy, if you look, I think sometimes we were talking about it today at school. I think sometimes coordinators don't take into account that you can miss tackles. And if
Yeah.
you miss tackles, which to me is the hardest thing in football, open field tackling.
Yeah.
And if you miss a tackle, it's a chunk play,
Yeah.
kind of way our offense is predicated, right? I mean, it's the same thing.
We see Kalen DeBoer take advantage of those same situations. Nick Sheridan take advantage of those same type of formations for Alabama on the offensive side of the ball. Our friend Tex Tider checking in here in the show chat. He notes that early 2000 games versus Oklahoma seemed pivotal. Pulling out those games could have turned the tide. Yeah. I was in Norman. You talked about that 2002 game with Dennis Franchione. That was a hell of a football game, Jeff. And then you go from Fran to Shula in 2003. I give Alabama a lot of credit in 2003. Played that Oklahoma team extremely tough there in Tuscaloosa. That was a season in which Alabama hosted Oklahoma and LSU in the same season. And that LSU team under Nick Saban in 2003 was one of the best visiting teams I've maybe ever seen at Bryant-Denny Stadium. That was a hell of a football team.
For sure. Yeah. And that was not good times at the Capstone then. There's a lot of, and if I remember Leighton Bearden, didn't he punt with a torn ACL?
Yeah, he had a ACL, I think, pretty much 01-02 or one of those seasons for sure. Yeah, he did.
Tyler Watts was the quarterback, and we're in that game. I think the ball slipped out of his hand, and they get a late touchdown. We had the ball down 3 or something, and they scoop and score. It was in the one in Norman. That was wild, but yeah.
I'll say this, man. Fran gets a lot of heat, and understandably so. But when that offense was right, that was a fun offense to watch with Tyler and some of those kind of veer option principles, and even getting into Shad Williams a little bit on the smoke draw. And there was actually some good stuff to kind of come out of there.
Ahmad Galloway had a good big game.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So, those are all good. Those were all the guys that came in with Chris. And they were all there in 99 when I was there, all good guys.
And they had some defensive linemen in that stretch too.
For sure.
That could go.
Yeah.
For sure. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Hey, but let's talk some Oklahoma defense, because that is an area where this OU team can perhaps push Alabama out of its comfort zone. You look at the statistical rankings and you think, well, rushing defense, OU 8th in the SEC, giving up 125 yards per game in SEC play. Passing defense, kind of the same thing at 9th. This is a passing defense for OU that has given up 10 touchdown passes in 6 SEC games, picked off just 2. Scoring defense 12th in the SEC at 28.5. But I guess, Jeff, you got to think about it too from the perspective of, as bad as this OU offense has been, that's probably had something to do with even the defensive numbers that we've seen from Oklahoma so far this season.
No, sure. I'm sure their minutes are playing so many minutes because, OU is a lot of 3 and outs and punts and having to play a lot. And with Venables, you better be shored up on the offensive line because he's going to bring people from everywhere. Always has when he was at Clemson and they were on their run. And, it's going to be I'm sure the offensive line coach, they've had in the offensive line staff with the backs and where they're fitting because they're gonna bring it.
Now, will they bring true numbers, Jeff, or will they simulate it some? Will they mix it, or will they just bring 5 or more?
I think they're going to be kind of like what we do at times. You get up there and you show and you get the O-line communicating and whatever, and then they'll back out. They'll bring it. They'll play twist games. I think they're still basing out of a 3-4, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's kind of Venables' deal. So, he's innovative. He's going to bring it. I'd be shocked if he didn't.
It always seems like he's got a linebacker, right? James Skalski, who I know you were familiar with from your coaching days, and now Danny Stutzman, and really the linebacker level in general. It just seems like Venables always got that guy at the linebacker position, at least one.
Yeah. Ben Watson at Clemson, wasn't it? That was in 15, 16, whenever. Yeah. So, he's got to have that one guy that's kind of the, that gets everybody lined up and gets them, communicated. But I'd be shocked if I don't see Venables playing much base. You know what I mean? He's going to he's going to put those people out on the edge, and he's going to cover them up. And there may be, I mean, I think there'll be some plays downfield if you can, if you can get a one-on-one matchup, there'll be some plays to be made.
Chad Anderson chiming in here with the Boz. Boz predates Venables a little bit, Chad.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I think Skalski, by the way, is a grad assistant at Oklahoma. So is that?
Yeah. I ran into him about a month and a half ago here. He works out at the gym. He's going to try to play some like arena ball, but he wants to go into the coaching ranks. So yeah, he's out at Oklahoma GAing with Coach Venables. So yeah.
There you go. Firsthand account from Coach Smitty. Yeah. So when you think about this Oklahoma offense and you think about kind of where they rank in these different numbers and how important explosive plays are now in today's football, especially, Smitty, OU 15th in the SEC offensively in terms of long scrimmage plays. So 64 plays in SEC play of 10 yards or more. That that comes out to about, I guess, 10, but that only gets you 15th these days. So do you think there's an over dependence maybe on explosive plays? Are coordinators, are offenses just not as willing to kind of take 4 or 5 yards as much as they used to be? What's your thought on that? It's you hear every coach talk about it. Got to get more explosive plays. We got to create more explosive plays. Nick Saban talked about it a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I'd probably straddle the fence on that a little bit. I know this: the last 3 games, Alabama hadn't had near as many explosive plays, and they've played way better. That's ball control. They run the ball, and then they wear you out in the second half. Kind of like they lean on the run game a lot. I'm a little bit, I think you got to take your shots to keep people out of the box.
Right.
If you got your shot, you got to back them up a little bit. But to me, there was nothing more demoralizing when an offensive coordinator was patient and would take his 3, 4, 7, 2, 9, 3, and just all the way down. You're pulling your hair out. I mean, if you can, a lot of offensive coordinators get impatient, and that's when they get in trouble. I think those guys. And I think Sheraton's done a good job of the last 3 or 4 weeks. Even in the South Carolina game, you could see he was trying to be a little bit more, not take your shots as much, and I just think that especially with the people Alabama's got, I think they can lean on you a little bit early. Those body blows, man, those are,
they're real.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it felt like Tennessee, maybe they tried to eat the elephant in one bite, right? They weren't willing or didn't feel like they could sort of just take a few bites at a time and work their way towards finishing the meal there, so to speak. But yeah, and look, when you talk about this Oklahoma defense, what they don't do is give up explosive plays. They're third in the SEC in conference play in terms of allowing 10 yards or more, just giving up 2 runs of 30 yards or more. So if you're thinking about some of those explosives you've gotten from Jalen here again of late, especially in the LSU game, I don't think they're going to be as easy to come by. And I know you look at South Carolina putting 35 on them with Lenora Sellers at the quarterback position, maybe some things like that. But Jackson Dart isn't a Redwood, and this is a defense that held Ole Miss to 26? And so, you may not get the chunks from the quarterback position that you did a couple of weekends ago.
Yeah, for sure. And that tells you that the kids trust the scheme if they're not giving up those big chunks, right? They're where they're supposed to be, right? So, because as much as he likes to manipulate the fronts and bring people, it creates an opportunity. But, obviously their guys have got a pretty good handle on it. And they've, like you said earlier, with them as struggling offensively, they've played a lot more defense than a lot of other teams. So I think some of those stats can be a little bit misleading, if you got
not just playing more defense, but put in bad situations, right?
Positions. That's right. With the turnovers,
short fields, things like that. I mean, it all goes into that pot, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'm sure they're a little fragile mentally, but as well as I know, in this league, you hang around, you let them hang around 3 quarters, and you get to the 12-minute mark in the fourth quarter, and you're up by 3, and here we go.
And it's senior night, Saturday night, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
So
here we go with a comment from the Godfather of the SEC. We already like that nickname, don't we, Smitty?
Absolutely.
Anything he says goes, in our opinion, at this point. If Alabama brings the heat, Jackson just isn't that good, in my opinion, when he's rattled. Well, I think that's true, Jeff, or Smitty, of really any quarterback, right? But it kind of goes back to confidence and the scar tissue, too, that a quarterback accumulates over the course of the season, sometimes as a result of taking excessive hits, sometimes from the result of maybe being told that you're going to the sideline, that you're not playing well enough, you're being replaced. Guys all handle that differently, it seems like.
Yeah. And if you bring people, a lot of times, if you're going to play a loose zone behind it, there's zone behind it. You don't have to play man every time you bring people. I mean, I know Womack will bring people and he'll play a loose zone behind it and they'll rally up, So, it just depends on the mindset and how these guys are built mentally. Those quarterbacks, if they're coached up and you bring it and you miss, you better know where your help's coming from, because that's the key, and leverage it, and you're going to give up some plays, but I would see what he could do, like we talked earlier. I would really see how we handle the lines of scrimmage.
Yeah, if you can win with 4, why do anything else?
Right.
If you can open the game, and like LSU, it looks like early on you're going to be able to win with 4, why expose yourself in some areas? That being said, I guess the other side, Smitty, is that OU is so depleted at wide receiver right now. If you don't feel like they really have guys that can hurt you, I know the instinct or the thought is, hey, let's just go get this guy with 5 or 6. I guess there's a couple different ways to look at that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's ways to do it. It's just like, where you kind of pick your poison, right? And these guys, OU's got film on Bama, and they'll challenge some of those young corners, and hopefully we can, they can get there and create some problems. But you talk about that. I thought Tennessee relied too much the other night just on their 4. I mean, Beck was clean a lot of the night, and he's the kind of guy.
It's almost like Tennessee got rope-a-dope, though. They got off to the good start. Yeah. And it felt like Beck was going to have another Beck game for this season anyway. And then when he hit the switch, to your point, it didn't seem like Tennessee ever adjusted to that.
Yeah, they just kind of and I guess they just thought their front 4 and Georgia's pretty good up front on the O-line when they're healthy, Yeah. And I was like, man, they were just, they didn't even come get him, after they were giving up big plays to the tight end, especially down the seams, So
did you think Bobo did a nice job, though, of kind of using the way Tennessee plays defense against Tennessee? Because they love to run. I mean, they love to look at the football, it seems like, Jeff, and they like to run. I mean, they are aggressive.
Yeah, I thought
Bobo caught him a couple times, I thought, with that.
For sure. I thought that was one of the better games. And that in the second half of the Bama game, he called a good game too, with some of the screens and stuff that he set up. But I thought that was his best game, his complete game, of the year, catching. But you're right, Tennessee's super, super aggressive. And but man, I just thought after they got 17-17 or 24-17, I thought they would bring it. And they just kind of, I thought that they kind of like what we're talking about with Bama and Oklahoma. Can your front 4 handle them, And
right.
Yeah, once it got to possession, it was over.
Well, Smitty, as we get out of here, I need your key guys for Alabama on Saturday night. Give me 1 or 2 on offense, and then we'll move to the defensive side of the ball.
I think it could be a big night for Haynes this week on Jam. I really do. I think that the offensive line is kind of finding their way, And, they've looked, I think that those guys could really control the games. Those are two talented guys that can punish you. And defensively, those guys inside, like I've talked about the whole night, I just think that those guys, those one or two, Latham and Pierre, when he comes in, and, some of those guys,
Keenan,
Tim
Smith.
Keenan, Tim Smith.
James Smith is a young guy that looks like he's been coming on of late.
Yeah,
For Alabama.
Overton can be huge against
yeah.
this, and I just think that that's where it's going to be won, because, like you said, we have an advantage with all the receivers that they have out and hurt, and I just think that those guys could. I'd be a little disappointed if they didn't control the line of scrimmage. I think that they can go in there and do that. But
Oklahoma does have a capable tight end. We've seen
sure.
that be problematic, not just for Alabama. It feels like in some ways, Jeff, watching college football, NFL football, it's been sort of a renaissance year for the tight end. Maybe a year in which the tight end position has even gone to another level as a defensive guy in what you've done. How problematic can that be? I mean, that guy.
Yeah, the chain mover, right? He's probably not going to take it 60, but he's going to get you 11 on 3rd and 8. I mean, look what happened Saturday night with Georgia.
Yeah,
their tight ends got loose and big plays.
All 3 of them did.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a nightmare. And then you got a guy that can, like Dupree and all our guys that we got. They can block. Their threats in the pass game. It's a unique, and especially the way they play them now. They just don't put their hand in the ground. They're back there at 8s. They're running split zone. They're running powers. They're running. Then the next thing you know, they slip out the back and they're in the flats by themselves because they're so hard to find.
Run that slice action and get you in the flat. And really, let's say OU really loads up on Jalen in terms of accounting for him in the run game. That means somebody else has got to make OU pay, right? And that's where I would think a position like tight end, or even if you throw it to the backs, and it doesn't have to be vertical throws, does it? Or intermediate throws. There's ways you can hit teams in the flat on circle routes, things like that, they can't account for everybody if they load up on the quarterback.
Right. Well, I think the last 2 or 3 games, starting with the LSU game, they kind of got Jalen in a rhythm by throwing little, dot passes and sit routes and inside the backers, and and it kind of gets him in a little bit of a rhythm. And then, then they hit Ryan Anderson on the flat,
Ryan Williams,
the flat. Ryan Williams on the flat. So against Mercer, that was a 7-yard throw. So I mean, if you're gonna, that's where I think they can hurt. McElwain was real good at that when he was a OC at Bama.
That LSU championship game plan comes to mind.
He would wear you out if you were, on with 4 and 5, Kevin Norwood, with people like that,
Chris Smelly.
Yeah, for sure.
Or maybe it was Brad. I probably have it wrong. One of the Smellies. Yeah, I'm getting old, man. Yeah, I'm getting old and it's late.
I hear you.
Too many quarter beers for Jeff and I back in the day, too.
For sure.
Oh, Smitty. It's always a lot of fun, man.
Man, it is fun.
Taking the time. This is the way we basically talk, we just catch up a lot of times. Maybe it's a little more colorful at times, but this is the Reier on YouTube version. And if you've enjoyed the program and you haven't subscribed to the channel as of yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. Hit that notification bell while you're at it. That way you're alerted to our content as it drops right here on Reier on YouTube. And a thumbs up is always appreciated as well. You traveling this weekend, Smitty?
Yeah, going to Clinton, South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
The home of the Presbyterian Blue Hose. Yes.
Yep.
So, Butler's there for their last game. And so me and the wife are dividing and conquer. Barry made the playoffs.
I saw that. Won the conference. Is that right?
Won the conference, playing Maryville at a home game. So,
Congrats to Coach Smitlkofer.
Yeah. So we're dividing and conquering this week. And the Bear, I don't know if Butler's going to get in or not. They're going to be 10-2. They're going to have to get at large.
A couple of good seasons though for your squads. The Killer Bees.
Good seasons. Been a lot of fun.
And Barry. Yeah,
for sure. It's been a lot of fun. So
we will catch up next week. with OU in the wake of this Alabama football team, and then the Iron Bowl. Maybe we'll get into some memories too.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Jeff
Yeah.
and I could probably go back a ways on some of those.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Smitty.
All right,
Safe
brother.
travels to you and Keely this weekend. Good luck to the boys. And always appreciate you here on Reier on YouTube. And we'll do it again real soon.
Yeah, man. Glad to do it. It's a lot of fun.
For Coach Smitty, Travis, thanking you for joining us right here on Reier on YouTube. Coming up right after this show, it is Second Helping Live with Brent Beard. So we're going straight from TR and Smitty into Second Helping. So be sure to check that out as well. Coming up right here on Reier on YouTube.